My grandfather used to have this saying as well: don't put off for tomorrow what can be done today. And I've kept that all throughout my life. Never been a procrastinator, never been good at procrastinating for some reason. And I was doing my assignment outside of and stay back. And then my teacher walks out of the room. He sees me and he looks over my shoulder and he starts walking away. Then he turns back and then he's like, you're going to be successful one day. And then he walks off. That's all he says, and walks off. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And I thought success meant, fancy cars, nice houses, a lot of money. Great. I'm feeling pumped. So I'm going to do even better now because this man, he's rich, he's wealthy, he's successful. So I'm going to I'm going to do everything that he says. So he told me to read this book by Jim Rohn, 12 Pillars. And little did I realize that book wasn't just about wealth creation. It was about personal development. And I was like, well, crap. Hey, man, how you doing?
Hey, doing well, Jay. How you doing?
I'm doing excellent, mate.
Heck yeah,
Considered.
yeah. Thanks for coming on. As you know,
I
we've
appreciate the
we've
opportunity, man.
we've chatted on your platform a couple times now, and I've got little glimpse here and there of your journey and what you've taken away from your obstacles and the challenges that you've been presented with. And we've talked all about mindset. Like I think a majority of what we talk about dives in there. And so like we talked about last time, I wanted to give you an opportunity to share your story, to share, what you've overcome, what you've been faced with, and that's, helped you develop the mindset you have today, where you're trying to go, and all those things with my audience. So, yeah, with that being said, before we get into the deep conversations, which we love to do, which is great, could you give us a little background on your journey and then ultimately like what led us to connecting?
Of course, man. So first of all, I just want to say thank you for allowing me to come on your platform and share a little bit about my journey and what I've been through. Uh, to be honest with you, to start off with, I was born into a pretty like lower class sort of family. My dad had to work two jobs just to put food on the table, but we never went without. We always had things uh, that we needed. Not necessarily everything that we wanted, but we didn't really want much except for friends and those people around us. I always crave connection, like um, just being in that relationship with people around me. I was always a curious kid, so whenever I would always hang around adults, never around young people my own age. For some reason, I was always asking the bigger questions, even though I didn't really know it at the time. Like looking back and speaking to my mom recently and asking her, these are some of massive questions like why am I here? Like the big question of religion and Christianity and salvation. So all those questions and like why do we have the Easter Bunny? I was like 5 years old when I asked like why do we celebrate Easter about a bunny and chocolate eggs, and same with Santa Claus. I never really understood that. I always thought there was something so much more. And even in school, man, like I wasn't exactly the most popular kid either. I was sort of the class snitch at times, so I wasn't really liked. In primary school, I was bullied as well for the way I looked, the way I acted, and I wasn't really given much opportunity in primary school to really come into myself. It was only in high school that I really started to develop and grow and learn and really find a little bit of who Jay was. And it was like, I remember from year 6 to year 7, there was a huge transitional period. And in year 6 to year 7, I went through a stage of my life when I was 14 or something like that. I started school quite late, by the way. I started when I was 6 years old because of I had learning developmental issues like math, science, history, English, the whole bit. I struggled with it. So my mum homeschooled me for about a year until I was ready to go into school. But when I met this girl when I was about 13, 14, and transitional period between year 6 to year 7. And she at the time I didn't know she was depressed at all. And I didn't know what depression really was. I didn't know what anxiety was, didn't know what stress was really, because you're completely naive. You're going through this adolescence transitional period as well. You're developing more and you're growing. And that period of your life is a very crucial stage of development for any young person. Like puberty, you've got all these hormonal imbalances, all these issues. You're really starting to grow and form your ideas of life and society. So I was exposed to this young girl. I mean, I wasn't, like I said, I wasn't a popular kid. She took notice of me and she started to, I guess you could say, want to be my friend. And then things sort of got a little bit more serious. And then she wanted to be my quote boyfriend in quotation marks. And the reason why I put him in quotation marks is because it wasn't really a relationship. It was uh, at that. It was she was she was depressed and clinically diagnosed with depression, and I had no idea at the time. And she was very good at masking it for the first couple of weeks, and that's when she started to unravel a lot about her life. And there was a lot of warning signs to start off with, but because I wasn't popular and she was a popular girl, she was very beautiful, and I thought to myself, well, what's the harm? I'm being noticed for once, and it felt good. So I started to ignore all the warning signs that were presented in front of me, and I started to just focus on, I guess, being popular in a way. And little did I realize that was actually doing damage to my brain and my conscious and my relationships with people and those around me. And I think a couple of weeks in, so one of the big warning signs is she told me that she was best friends with her ex and they were still talking and they were still very, very close. And I was just like, well, that's not right. Why is this girl still best friends with her ex-boyfriend and she still has feelings for him, yet she's coming to me and saying she has feelings for me? She's confused. But I thought, I can get over that. It's like emotional roller coaster ride as a 13, 14-year-old. And then that's when things started to change. So one day she gets out a razor blade and she starts cutting herself while on Skype. And I'm looking at this like, this is not normal. What's going on here? And I felt absolutely helpless. I felt like I can't help this girl. I'm on the other side, and there's blood. And no 13 or 14-year-old should ever have to see or experience that sort of thing, and or ever have to go through it in their own life. There's something definitely wrong, and you need to get help. And there's like avenues nowadays like Beyond Blue that you can go to, but I didn't know that at the time. I was completely naive. I thought I kept it to myself. And she kept asking me, she's like, well, we're not going to be together if you're not depressed. And there was this emotional turmoil and abuse that I went through. And I was like, okay, fine. I'm going to sort of act depressed. But when you start believing your own lie, and that's what happened to me. I started believing my own lie, and I started telling myself that I'm no good. I'm not worth anything. And uh, things sort of got a little bit worse, progressively worse. And when I turned 14, I had to see uh, a psychologist, and I had these suicidal thoughts as a 14-year-old kid. And that's not normal. So I sat down with a psychologist, and she helped. She was a beautiful lady. She helped me sort of dive into all these issues and really help me figure things out that I couldn't help her more than what I was doing. And it wasn't my fault at all. And I needed to break from this feeling that if I was to leave, she was going to kill herself, because she made me feel like if I was to leave, it was my fault and I was going to kill her basically. But when I finally understood that it wasn't my fault and I could leave, it was this separation between the mind and the spirit and the current situation that made me heal. And that came from this lady, and I owe a lot to her as well. I owe a lot to my parents as well for pushing me. But that's pretty much like, from the school point of view, one of the biggest hurdles to start off with in my life. And then other things as well. I was born with kidney reflux, scar tissue on my right kidney, and uh, really protein leaking out of my body constantly. So I can't have a great deal of protein. Otherwise, my kidneys don't like me very much. And creatinine levels go incredibly high. So I've got to live with that. And then I always had a lot of hospital visits. So I almost died when I was 2 years old as well from my mum accidentally gave us salmonella food poisoning, and they couldn't find. I was so bad that they couldn't actually find a vein to put fluid. I was so dehydrated. So I was very close to dying actually because I was that dehydrated. But fortunately enough, I didn't, and that also left damage to my kidneys as well. So that's something that I need to watch on a consistent basis. And I was told last year that my kidneys will progressively get worse as I get older if I don't take care of them. And I can't drink, I don't smoke, I don't do any of those things that are going to jeopardize my health, because health is one of the biggest aspects of my life that I hold dear to me, and I don't take it for granted in the slightest. And then other things, just had a second near-death experience. I think it was around the age of 14, 15, with my appendix. There's a whole story behind that, which we can get into if you like. But pretty much almost I was an hour away from dying, from negligence of the doctors and thinking that they knew best, and thinking that my mum didn't know what she was talking about. And really just, they showed me my burst appendix. I was like half asleep, they showed it to me. It was like this massive pus thing. It was great to see, honestly. But
Stuff's always fun to see.
100%, man. Like I have this, 'cause I've been exposed to a lot of like health related things over the years. So I've been able to sort of become accustomed to it in a way, which has just been great. But, you know, growing up, it wasn't always easy. And I say that in the best possible way, because I also lost one of my biggest mentors in my life, my grandfather, and he taught me a lot in my life. And we also lost our first German Shepherd, Missy, to bloat at a very young age. So I was exposed to death, pain, trauma, all these things from a very young age. And I've recently been looking back on it and thinking to myself, well, what did I learn through all that? And I honestly can say that I wouldn't change anything for the world, because now I am who I am today because of those challenges. And I can relate to a lot of people because of those challenges and those health problems. And, that I understand there's so many people out there that are far worse than me and have gone through far worse. And I look at them and the way that they see life. And one thing about being in hospital and seeing young kids, and they're in a lot of pain, but they don't show the pain as much. They've still got this utter joy and appreciation for life. It's gratitude. And having seen that, it made me realize and understand that I've got nothing to complain about. I'm still alive. I'm still healthy in relative terms, and I can still do so much in my life. And man, like if you were to ask me questions about certain aspects of my life, I'll be able to share stories with you of everything that I've learned that has gotten me to this point today. And amazing.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. And on that note, we've talked a lot about perspective, and it's the difference between thinking your life's over or thinking your life's just getting started, no matter what reality you're experiencing. Everyone's got their own difficulties, their own challenges inside and out. Some are visible, some aren't. You and I share a lot of the, internal struggles and challenges. And so most people look at us and see us as, these healthy, happy looking people, but like we had our, our differences and our challenges, and we've chosen this perspective. And something I wanted to note from our talking prior to this, and even throughout you just sharing that, you don't have like a victim mentality. Like, you just specifically said you choose gratitude because things could be worse. There's other people that are worse off than you, that are doing well, that are succeeding, that are living their life to the fullest, and that is a belief that I have as well. And right out of the gate, when you were born, you said you had some health challenges, and then as you got older you had some challenges with learning, and then the younger relationship, which I can relate to being around that age and having a traumatic relationship experience as well, that looking back on it, it wasn't such a big deal, but at the time I was so young, so innocent, so naive, so still all these conditionings occurring. And then you found your way kind of out of that through different people that were pivotal, beyond just your parents, and your grandfather as a mentor. But I'm curious, as because my journey and the things I've gone through, BMX was always something I could put my energy towards. I'd have an intention, a focus to drive towards. So any of these challenges that came my way, my mind, like my vision, was focused on this outcome that I was working towards within the world of BMX. Was there something that you were also striving for at the same time that allowed you to not play the victim role in all of these experiences? Because you've had more than a handful of occasions where you could have given up, figuratively or literally. You mentioned that, but there had to have been something that was pushing you forward. What was that?
Mm. So at the start of my life, I didn't really know what it was. I always thought, I was meant for something. I didn't really know what that was though. Like, I couldn't see it. And I think what kept me going was the fact that I wanted to live, and I didn't realize until I was 8 years old what my passion was, what my love was, which sort of kept me moving forward, which was film. And the love of actually stories. So first and foremost, stories for me was something that I resonate with and I hold very dear to my heart. And I love the creativity aspect of just looking at a story and how that connects with your heart, your emotions, your mindset, everything. And some of the best stories that I've ever read, growing up, it was Ricky Tikki Tavi and Uncle Tom's Cabin, all these stories that have tremendous impact and meaning in one's life, and all the stories from the Bible as well that I grew up with too. Like David and Goliath, Samson, strength, Jesus, all these amazing, incredible stories that I still remember to this day that have impacted my life on many. Like, you think of the story of Joseph as well, and he was sold into slavery by his own brothers, and more than that as well, he suffered these like put into jail for being wrongfully accused. And I have something very, very similar to that happened to me last year. So I look back at these stories, and these stories, they're real, and to me, and I'm just like, well, if that person went through that, then why can't I go through that as well? And they came out the other side better than what they did when they were going through this pain and this time of real torment. Why can't I be better? Why can't I work towards being better? But when I was 8 years old, I realized, okay, stories, and then being able to translate those stories with this powerful medium of film, because I'm a visual learner. I love seeing things with my eyes and connecting things visually and understanding things visually, because that's just how my brain functions. So I thought to myself, well, if I can tell stories with powerful messages and themes in them that are going to impact someone's life, teach them, encourage them some way, inspire them, and send people away thinking, because a lot of the films that I was seeing, they didn't really get my brain thinking. It was more or less just the entertainment factor, which is not bad at all. And I find myself sometimes wanting to just numb my brain because it's always going. So, but I wanted to create things that were not just entertaining for entertainment's sake, but creating films that really change people's perspectives on a lot of things. And that's sort of what whenever I went through a hardship, I'd always think of myself towards the end, towards winning an Oscar, towards having my own business, towards being the best version of me I possibly could. But I realized that I was looking at this false sense of reality, and I was creating it for myself. I wasn't focused on the here and now. I was focused on the what ifs. So what if this happens? And that sort of that gave me this false sense of hope. What I really needed to do in that moment that I was going through pain and trauma was really rely on what can I control in the present right now. I can't control what's going to happen tomorrow. So why should I be worried about tomorrow? I should be mindful of it, definitely, but I shouldn't have to allow that what if scenario to impact my now, because the now is the important part. And if we allow ourselves to worry about tomorrow, we're just going to make our now even worse. So I only realized that like last year, actually. And looking back and seeing everything that I was doing, I started to realize, okay, well, that's exactly what I was doing. I wasn't focusing on the future as much. I was focusing on the present moment as best I could and trying to focus all my energy and attention on getting through the pain. And pain is inevitable. Like, we're all going to go through it. But our attitude through the pain, that's a choice that we can decide for ourselves. Okay, will we allow the pain to define who we really are, or will we allow the pain to better us and grow us to become a more mature human being? And that's what pain does. As much as it sucks, and since I've been through a lot of pain, a lot of loss, a lot of grief, I've realized that if I didn't go through all that, would I still have the same appreciation, the same gratitude for life that I do now? Probably not. And I always liken it to a story of two people, like if you have a choice, two people looking at a mountain, there's two paths. And the first path is the easy path straight to the top. And most people, given the fact that it's an easy path, they're going to take that path. The second person, he sees both paths and he looks at the hard road. He sees all the challenges. He sees all the hard work, the persistence, and the pain and grief and all that going towards the top. He looks at both and he decides to take the hard road. Which person do you think learned the most along the way? And I always say the person that took the hard road, even though it took him a lot longer to get to the top. Once he reached the top, it was bliss, because he knows he can look back on his life. He can look back on climbing that mountain, all the struggles, all the pain, everything that was tough, and he can understand and appreciate his life for the way that it is now, rather than, and compared to the one that took the easy road, didn't learn really anything, had quick success, and is still pretty much the same person as he was when he first started. So that's how I view my life. And I think I came up with a saying, and I think I've shared it to you on our conversations, which is be persistent to remain consistent. And I came up with that beginning of this year, actually, because I realized that if I want to improve, if I want to grow, I need to be persistent at failing. And failure is not a bad thing. It's how we look at failure. And I've had failures left, right, and center in my life. And I look at that and I almost smile, because in the moment, you almost feel like you're worthless and you feel like life's going to end. But then as time goes on, you start to notice things which are incredible. You start to notice, oh, I didn't know that, but I wouldn't have known that if I didn't fail. Okay, I know that I'm not going to do that again. And it's like this other story that a friend of mine told me once of, I can relate to it because it's a filmmaking analogy. So a lighting guy, he's setting up a light on a film set, and he drops the light and it smashes the $100,000 light, and he thinks he's going to get fired. So he runs down to the head of the department, and the guy looks at him and he's all panicked and he's like, I'm going to get fired for this. I'm so sorry. I won't. And he's like, it's okay. He's like, why is it okay? Aren't you reprimanding me? He's like, everyone makes mistakes. And I know that next time you're not going to make that same mistake. So don't be so worried. And I was just like, wow, we put so much pressure on people in that actual failure for this fact that they actually did fail at something, when that should be a momentous and joyous occasion that this person did fail at something and they've learnt. It's a growth mindset, not a not growing mindset, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Yeah, no, it makes 100% sense. And that's something that you and I've talked about in depth. And, it's one of my beliefs that there is no failure unless you decide to give up after just one attempt. But if you can understand that falling, that quote unquote failing, is a part of the journey, you can embrace the journey, embrace the process, you're going to learn a lot. And that analogy you use with the two different paths to the top of the mountain, one's going to be quick and easy, the other one's going to be a little bit more challenging, a little bit longer, but you're going to learn more, and it's going to allow you to grow as a human being. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, is especially through the power of reflection, is everything that we've gone through has been our most difficult challenges up until this moment in time that we're reflecting on it. And that should give us empowerment to move forward and know that other challenges are going to be similar or they're going to be different, but we're able to overcome if we look on our past. And that's something Jackie and I were talking about with our career, her in Taekwondo, me in BMX, is the ability to accept pain on a daily basis physically. When you step away from that sport after so many, for both of us, like good more than half of our lives at the time, when you step away from something like that and you think about how that applies to every area of life, you're stronger for it. And so even outside of the sports that we played, just any adversities that we went through, any challenges in the moment, yeah, it sucked. And that's where like pain is inevitable, but suffering is a choice. Because as soon as you understand that you can make a difference now, you can control your actions, your thoughts, your emotions, that you're going to get closer to the vision that you hold. And that's something you said that was really powerful, that I'm super passionate about, is not putting ourselves in the past, not putting ourselves in the future, holding an intention for what the future may look like, that we, or what we want it to look like, what we want it to feel like, what we want to be doing, who we're going to be doing it with, holding that intention in the future, but focusing on now, because now is all that we can control. And all that we can control is our thoughts, our actions, and our emotions. Anyone else is none of our responsibility. We may love them, we may care for them, but how they show up is not our responsibility. And so you mentioned that you've had these different moments that brought you back into this understanding now, reflecting that like being present is everything. Hold an intention of what you want in the future, but be focused now, because that's where your energy is going. And people, they worry about these man-made stressors, which aren't real stress to your life. And that just takes away all the energy from the moment that they're powerful in now and can create. And so I appreciate you sharing that. And on that note, all that because you're still fairly young. You're like, were you 23, 24?
I'm 23 for those people that are listening.
Yeah, and so I'm
But
31, so there's a 7-8 year age difference there, and just in my last 8 years, I've been through so much, and reflecting now, if I were to be given a choice, beforehand, like, hey, like you said, like here's two routes to the top of the mountain, which one do you want to take? It would probably be difficult, but knowing what I know now, I would make that same decision. All the ups, all the downs, because I've learned so much that moving forward, I believe will be easier, or I'd say more simple, still challenging for different aspects because we're always having new experiences. But had I taken the easy route, I wouldn't be prepared for, where I am today and where I'm going. And so with all that being said, I'm curious, like what is your intention moving forward now? Like you've had these experiences, you're still very young, I'm very young in my eyes too. So it's like, I'm transitioning from a dream that I was living to creating a new dream for myself. And it occurred because of these challenges, these wake up calls, as I call them. So for you, what is the intention, moving forward, like 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, even tomorrow? Like what are you focusing on now that's going to affect your future?
that's a good question. I also want to say as well, don't become a victim. Don't get into the victim mentality either, because that's easy. And a lot of people do get into that victim mentality. They overthink things, and I'm a perfect example of that. Like I overthink things because it's easy to overthink. And the moment we allow our brains to run wild, then we automatically allow ourselves to become the victim and to allow ourselves more anxiety and more stress than we actually really need to. And that's, you got to control it. And if everyone would just stop, breathe, focus on something that is good and positive in your life, then you'll be okay. Understand that ultimately, no matter what happens in your life, apart from even in death as well, life is going to be okay. That's what I realized, that no matter what I go through, I'm going to be fine. But as long as I see it as that, it will be that. See, I have another saying as well that I believe I said in our conversation. If you say you can, if you say you can't, you won't. If you say you can, you will. So tell yourself every single day that you can and you will be something more than what you were yesterday. Who you were yesterday is different to who you are today. You go through that growth every single day. You become new. You are renewing your mind daily. It's not a renewal of your mind when I want to. I just sort of wanted to add that in
No, it's
there a little
beautiful.
bit.
Yeah, love
Yeah.
it.
So moving to your question now of what's moving forward, I believe it was. So I always, like I said, I always wanted to be a filmmaker, and my life took a very different turn. So, in high school, I suffered with anxiety and did my HSC. Uh, did quite well, all things considered. And even though, like, you could see everything was sort of against me, and we had family dynamic issues during that period of time. So at the age of 16, 17, I literally went from being a boy to a man overnight. It was a crazy, crazy 4-year stint of my life that taught me a lot. And and I won't share. I won't go into, because it's um, quite hard to actually speak about. But what I will say is that my mum is one of the most incredible, strong women I've ever met. Like, if you look at my life and you see everything that I've gone through, she's just double it, like times it by 3. And she still walks around. She's still a faithful Christian lady. She still loves life, loves us, loves her family, and is just like wise as well. So I think I get a lot of the wisdom from her as well, and also my grandfather too. But yeah, like, I wanted to go to film school after year 12, but I was told I was kind of a little bit lost, because I was told that I couldn't go to film school. I wasn't ready for it. And really, I wasn't following my path. It was literally like, if you go to film school, Jay, what are the job opportunities for you leaving film school? There's always that question in the back of my mind, like, financially speaking, because we grew up with nothing, and I wasn't going to be financially dependent on my parents because I didn't have anything. So I needed to get a job and become financially dependent in a way. Uh, so they, I wanted to be a nurse at one stage, because that seemed like a stable option, and I liked helping people, even though I didn't really know it at the time. Um, and then that didn't really work out, so I changed my mind. And then I went to business college for a year. So got my diploma in business, and I was all excited. But when you go through a place of comfort to a place of something that's brand new and it's not comfortable to you, it's sort of daunting in a lot of ways, and you're sort of trying to figure out, okay, where's my place in all this? I had my place before, but now it's all changed, it's all shifted, and now I've got to figure out how to fit in. And the very first term, I remember, I wanted to impress everybody. I was like the one that, when I wore a suit and tie to business college, I acted a certain way. I was basically fake. And this wasn't really who Jay was. This was who everybody wanted Jay to be. And uh, I was voted in as the class business president, which is like their honor roll system, and I didn't really enjoy it. And come the second term, I mean, I have one moment in the first instance, which sort of changed my perspective on a lot of things, and really started making me realize and understand who I really was. It was one of my teachers. He's he was an entrepreneur, very high in business, and I stayed back one class doing my assignments because that's who I was. My grandfather used to have this saying as well: "Don't put off for tomorrow what can be done today." And I've kept that all throughout my life. Never been a procrastinator. Never been good at procrastinating for some reason. And I was doing my assignment outside of and stay back. And then my teacher walks out of the room. He sees me and he looks over my shoulder and he starts walking away. Then he turns back and then he's like, "You're going to be successful one day." And then he walks off. That's all he says, and walks off. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And I thought success meant, you know, fancy cars, nice houses, a lot of money. Great. I'm feeling pumped. So I'm going to do even better now because this man, he's rich, he's wealthy, he's successful. So I'm going to try and I'm going to do everything that he says. So he told me to read this book by Jim Rohn, 12 Pillars. And little did I realize that that book wasn't just about wealth creation. It was about personal development. And I was like, well, crap. I didn't understand this until I've got all the notes written down in this book. So I've had this book since 2016. A friend of mine gave it to me as a gift. And it's got my life verse on there, which I want to share as well, which is those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on the wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. And that's literally my life. The amount of times that I have fallen down, I've gotten back up and I've soared like an eagle, far better than I could have ever imagined, you know, and success to me and what I've realized over the years was not about money, was not about the fancy cars, all this sort of stuff that society has conditioned you to think and believe that is real success. Success to me was my bettering myself, my relationships with others, giving, service, gratitude, and being in a place of joy. So anyway, when I kind of rebelled in term semester two, and walked away from the whole system, and they didn't like it. They didn't like the fact they tried to control me even more. And looking back, you know, if you're going to do a job, do it well, do it excellently. And that's one of the things that I regret the most is not doing the very best that I possibly could have, not going back to term one, Jay, but going back to a place where I knew that I could do the very best that I could. And I didn't have this stinking rotten attitude and hate everything around me. And that's when I got into CrossFit as well. So I thought that I was going to be a CrossFit athlete. And so I started to get myself CrossFit ready. My life and my world revolved heavily around fitness. And come 2017, I was like, yes, I'm going to go CrossFit. And all of a sudden I had an injury, and financially speaking, it wasn't very viable either. And I was like lost as well. I was sort of like coasting through life. And I was like, well, what am I going to do now? I had small jobs on the side of everything that I was doing at the time, which wasn't much. And so, yeah, it was almost like, okay, this realization moment that I need to do something else. So I started my own business as well, which is in filmmaking. Didn't really go very well, kind of failed, didn't really understand it. And I had this very cocky mentality and mindset that to my detriment, actually. And no one really wanted to hire me. I got small little gigs every now and then, but it wasn't as what I thought it would be. I didn't understand why. So I became very resentful. And during that period of time as well, I was also hospitalized for 8 days. And the thing that I valued the most, which was my dignity um, and privacy as well, was literally stripped from me. And I was literally taken from a place of sheer and utter pride to a place of utter humility in overnight. I started to think and realize this is the path that you were heading on, but that's not the path that you need to go on, Jay. You need to have a shift in your life. And that's when I started to change. And I
You
realized in
said
that
that was
moment,
2017.
2017.
That's the year I was diagnosed for a third time with two additional brain tumors, leaving me with four today. And that's when
Wow,
my
man.
shift, what I call from self to purpose, occurred.
That's exactly what happened to me, except I didn't have brain tumors, but the purpose aspect. And I was like, well, what is my purpose? And I got a job somewhere else, and I was sort of trying to figure out my purpose in that moment as well. And I also struggle with addictions to body image and foods and all that sort of stuff. And then come 2018, I got into. I actually started the Storybox in 2018. Funny enough, as more or less like just a film podcast. So I was still heavily involved with film at the time, and still was on like the trajectory, and still was persistent at wanting to be a filmmaker, and that's all I wanted. But I I started the Storybox with a friend of mine. We're just talking about movies with great stories in them, and little did I understand or realize at that time that the Storybox was going to be something so much more. And it was like every time we had a good story, we'd always put it in this virtual box to go back to later. So the idea of that was there back in 2018, but I wasn't committed, and I struggled with commitment. And with anything really, I was like, I got bored, and I was like, this isn't going to go anywhere. I didn't have a vision for it back then. It was too time consuming, too financially taxing as well. And so I left it cold turkey, and I was like, no, I'm not going to do this anymore, and got a job, um, like casual jobs, just on and off, just to pay the bills. And then towards the end of 2018, I got into a relationship with someone, and that's when I formed my purpose, my identity, and my future in this relationship, which was dangerous. And I thought that I was going to marry this person. She was the one, and my life was going to be successful. We're going to be great together, the whole thing. And things didn't really work out that way. And come the beginning of 2019, around I think April, around Easter time. So she breaks up with me Easter with no real reason why. I didn't understand it, and it left me really broken. Left me really questioning more about why this happened to me. Like I thought ego got in the way. I thought I was this great guy, and I didn't see all the things that I did wrong and all the things that I could have improved on. I always focused on the things that she did wrong. And when I realized about 2 weeks later that this was mostly my fault, I was controlling. I had so many issues. I wasn't confident. I had so many addictions I needed to deal with. I had a lot of things that I had brought baggage that I had brought into the relationship, and I was making it worse. And so I took ownership and responsibility on that for myself. And I went on a journey of self discovery. I was also in real estate, which was a new world for me. I had never understood this world before. It was uh, it was hard. Like being thrown in the deep end. My very first day, I had just gone through the breakup. It was still very raw. My very first day, I was told to go and show a house. Uh, I was like, I don't know the first thing about showing a house, let alone selling the thing. So, and I was nervous, and I had a lot of pain and a lot of grief inside me, but you can't allow the other person to see that. So I held it, and I remember it was like really, really nice lady, and she took pity and compassion on me. She's just like, it's okay, Jay. It's your first day. I understand. Do your best. but not everyone was like her. And that taught me that I need to be stronger. And in order for me to be stronger, I need to put aside my ego and everything that I'm overthinking things and worrying about what I can't control, worry about what I can control. And I ended up becoming very good at real estate. And the reason why I became very good at real estate was just focusing on people and listening and really reacting to what they needed rather than what we were telling them that they should buy. And my integrity as well, my character really developed and formed there. My skill sets as well, and just my curious mind, like I had in the very beginning of my life, started to come back. I sort of lost it for a while because I was too afraid to ask questions. But real estate sort of brought it back in my life, and I became more curious. I started asking questions. I started learning, absorbing, and watching. And if you want to learn something, observe someone that knows more and ask questions, but don't be afraid to ask them questions either, because you're going to learn so much. And that's what I did. So I soaked up all this information, this self-development as well at the same time, started listening to all these podcasts as well. And really things didn't really work out too well with my boss in real estate, to his detriment, because there's a lot of talent that a lot of the people could see. And when I left, I resigned and I held my head up high because I knew that I did all I could to to better my boss, to better his business, to better myself as well, and to better other people. And you know, I when I left there though, I had this sense of joy and sense of like fulfillment. Like I know that real estate was not meant to be my career. I know there was something more in my life, and that's when I sort of went on another journey of looking for jobs. So I had a lot of opportunities open up for me, a lot of doors open, but the one that I really needed to open, I couldn't see yet. And so I needed to close these other doors in front of me to open the one door that I needed to walk through. So I had this massive opportunity presented in front of me, 180 applicants down to 6 people, group interview. They chose me. I was sitting down with the CEO of the company, and he asked me this one question. He's like, "Jay, why do you want to work here?" And I was like, "I want to help people." He's like, "Do you think you could be helping people uh, in this job?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I can help them get a job, but I realized going home, there's got to be something more than just helping someone get a job." And that's when I sort of thought to myself, well, podcast, that's a way, that's a platform. And I thought, well, I'm not going to do this podcast unless I have a vision for what it's going to be. And if I don't have that vision, I'm not going to be committed. And I won't be like going back. I won't be persistent. And if I'm not persistent, I won't be consistent at it. And I won't create these good habits in my life. And that's really where the Storybox came about. But it was just more of a hobby to start off with, and I was like, I'm going to be committed to this hobby to start off with, and then work from the hobby. So just started building it slowly but surely, day by day, and started reaching out to my friends and family members as well, and saying, "Hey, look, do you want to come and be interviewed?" And I was nervous as anything, man. I remember my first ever big interview was the top real estate agent in the company that I was working for. He had about 9,000 followers on Instagram at the time, and he was quite well known. And I was like, I'm gonna just reach out to him and see what he says. So I reached out. He said, "Yes, let's book a time." These 2-word responses. I'm like, this ain't normal. Like, what's going on? But he was just like that. He has very little time. And the story goes, I drive about an hour and 35 minutes to where we were meant to be meeting. I get there. His assistant tells me that he's gone back down to Sydney, which is about an hour or so drive from where I was and where we were meant to meet. And I've gone, oh, okay. But this was the turning factor of, okay, do I really, really have a passion for this? Do I really want to do whatever it takes to build this business and get it to a place of greatness, so to speak? And it's about doing whatever it takes. So, I could spend an hour getting back in my car, driving all the way back down to Sydney and meeting this man somewhere, or I could just walk away and say, we can schedule another time, which probably won't actually happen because he's so busy. So I'm like, okay, tell me where he is. She gave me his phone number. I call him up. I remember being so nervous speaking to him on the phone, saying, where are you? I can meet you anywhere you like. He's like, okay, we're going to meet you in Hyde Park. So I get in my car, drive all the way back down to Sydney, park in Hyde Park, somewhere in Hyde Park, meet him. And I was 5 minutes late. And we ended up, he was this big towering presence of a man. And I remember just being so freaking nervous. I was like, shook his hand. His hand was massive. I was just like, I felt so small. But doing the interview, sitting down with this man and speaking with him and hearing his story, how he went from nothing to something, was inspiring. And that's what I started to realize, that stories, they inspire, they motivate, they challenge, they educate people. And they do that in so many different ways. And stories are incredibly powerful. And so that's what I realized. I'm like, well, I've tapped into something here that I didn't really know I've tapped into. And the more I started reaching out to people, the more I started getting confidence and to reach out to people. And, you're going to get rejections. Like I got rejection after rejection after rejection, but that didn't matter to me. And I started remembering what my grandfather used to tell me. He's like, Jay, if you don't ask, you don't get. So don't be afraid to ask. It's that fear of rejection that a lot of people actually struggle with. And I struggle with it as well. But once I got over that fear and realized that what's the worst I can say? No. And I always say as well that if the more no's you get is actually leading you to the one yes that you need. So it's okay to have rejections in life, in relationships, in business, whatever it is, it's going to come. But going back to the defining factor, don't allow those rejections to define who you are. Allow those rejections to build you to a place of gratitude that you actually got to reach out in the first place. And then if you do get a win, celebrate the win. If it's a small win, celebrate that too. Doesn't matter what it is. And just I'm super grateful. I'm super appreciative of where I've come from to where I am now. I'm still growing. I'm still learning. And the story box is nowhere near where I would like it to be. And the story box is just one thing out of the many things that I do want to create. I want to create a media brand, still going back to film. I want to teach, I want to coach, I want to mentor young people as well, because there's a lot of things that I went through that I can relate to young people and what they go through. And the Storybox is just one platform that I am building, but there's so many other things that I want to build. And it's a journey, man, but it's an exciting journey. And the reason why I reached out to you as well, and I had no idea that you're actually going to say yes either, because he's this guy. He's got 53,000 something followers on Instagram. He's pro BMX guy. He's got a lot happening for him. But I just thought, why not? If he says no, it's okay. I'll reach out again. I'm going to be a persistent bugger at just you're not annoying people, but I think just constantly hammering away or chiseling away, I should say, not hammering, but keep chiseling away at that rock, and eventually it's going to break. And once it does break, you'll be able to connect. And that's what I've realized. The more persistent you are, the more consistent you will be. You're creating good habits. For me, it's about reaching out to people. It's about connecting with people, relationship building, like we're doing at the moment. It's great, man. And I appreciate you and all the conversations that we've had. And this has been a very long-winded answer to your question.
No, it's perfect. And something that you mentioned was, your quote that you love is being persistent, creating consistency, that type of thing. Like a lot of people ask, like, how can I get motivated? How can I be more motivated? Things like that. But it's exactly what you said. Like the more persistent you are, the more consistent you'll be, and that'll lead to success, depending on how you define success. But that's a perfect equation for momentum, motivation, success, all those things. And you shared how you could have given up when you went to meet that top real estate agent, and you chose to go the hard route, because you had this vision in your mind for something you wanted to create, that you didn't know that maybe this hobby of starting a podcast would turn into what it is today. Same thing when I was 13 years old and I started riding a BMX bike on ramps for the first time, and it was like, oh, this is cool. And then it just consumed me. And then by the time I was 17, 18, I was paying my bills from it. What better way to live than through something that you're passionate about? But that comes with a vision, a strong vision. And you mentioned a couple things earlier that I want to touch upon, this gap that you were feeling, like who Jay was inside opposed to who you thought people were perceiving you as. And you dressed up with a suit and a tie. And I've been there. My first formal presentation I ever gave, it was at a retail graduating class at a college here in Florida. Well, not here, I'm in North Carolina, but here in America. And I was like, oh, a retail class, like I'm gonna wear my nice suit, all this stuff. And I was like, I felt super awkward. It wasn't me. And it was my first presentation. And I've talked to some students since. They're like, oh, I didn't know it was your first time. But to me, I was like, that was horrible. But I wasn't being congruent with who I was internally. And I was trying to be something I thought other people wanted me to be. With what you mentioned, I'm a former professional BMX athlete. I run my own business now, like all these things. So I was like, I have to look like a certain way. And something that's helped me along the way is you mentioned the power of stories, and why we're having this conversation on my platform is because I love sharing stories. You love sharing stories. And now I wanted you to be the guest on my platform to share your story. And you've done an incredible job. And I appreciate that. But learning other people's stories, their journeys, what they went through, how they didn't just wake up born into success one day, that's something that's always resonated with me. Which I mentioned to you the other week was, virtual mentors. We have mentors in our lives that are often friends, family, or a counselor at school, or whatever may come across in our path. But when we looking to other people that are doing something that our personal network hasn't done, and we reverse engineer their journey, that's what helped motivate me. And so I love that you mentioned that, because that's something that's been really passionate, I've been really passionate about since, I was diagnosed in 2010 with a brain tumor, looking at Lance Armstrong's story. And for me, I had another bicycle rider, athlete I can get on board with. And I was like, man, like he and I can relate, because I'm about to have my head cut open. He had his head cut open, but he was able to return. And so that inspired me. It didn't motivate me. It inspired me to work towards something, because I saw what someone else was able to do with my circumstances. And to me, they went through a little bit more than I was going through. So it just built this belief in me, this inspiration to keep moving forward and to not give up. And you mentioned, something earlier that just clicked right here, actually, was far too often do people in today's society, I believe, live in the moment, in the presence of they're dictated by their circumstances. Like they're so in the moment, they play the victim card. They play life's hard. I'm a failure. They're judging me. Must be nice for them to do that. This never works out. And I believe it's because they don't have a strong vision that they're working towards, or they don't have a strong vision and a belief that it's possible for them. And so the reason I love our conversations is because you and I are very clear where we are, very different points in our lives, but we're having similar experiences and reflections that are creating these conscious moments that we're able to put into a story. We're able to share. We're going to keep taking away different metaphors or perspectives as we get older and we experience more, and wisdom occurs. And I think that's something that if people could understand, like if you put your energy into something that you can become passionate about, you're holding this vision, that's what's defining you. Again, you're not focusing all of your energy in the future. You're having an intention set in the future, and you're focused on the controlling of your actions, your thoughts, and your emotions now, rather than being defined by your circumstances. I think that's something really profound. And I've seen, just from our, a couple of times, having these conversations, very in depth than the average, encounter on the street. But I just appreciate you sharing that perspective and really, reaching out and staying persistent, because, it led us to having an amazing first conversation, 5-6 weeks ago, and then another one. And then here we are again, and I see many to come. So yeah, I just wanted to say that is, thank you for going all in on a hobby that seems to become a passion now, that I would argue has developed the whole time, with your life. That's something I've been learning about me. And so, with that being said, I loved your long-winded answer because you touched on so many points that I'm still trying to wrap my mind around all the different points that I wanted to talk about. But one thing I did remember this whole way, which I'm very proud about, is you mentioned your professor in school told you this, you're going to be successful.
Mm.
You mentioned what you thought in that moment. Success was money, business success, the house, the cars, whatever it was. Um, you defined what success means to you today. So, with all that being said today, what do you think he meant in that moment?
I think he saw something unique that I didn't actually see, which was that I'm a hard worker, that I'm willing to do whatever it takes. And little did I realize, there's actually a backstory to this. I actually went to the open day and I saw him at the open day. He walks out, shakes my hand, and he says the same thing. He's like, "You're going to be successful one day." Walks back into the classroom and starts teaching again. I understood that he never said that very line to any other student but me. And I always wondered, why did he say that to me? What did he see? Because I always had other people growing up as well saying, Jay's a leader. Jay's going to be a leader one day. And it was almost like that I had this pressure on me to be a certain way. But what I understood looking back at it now is that I I was on the path. I just didn't see it. All the habits that I had created, like not being a procrastinator. A procrastinator is lazy. A procrastinator won't do things that needs to be done. That's not successful. How are you going to be successful if you're constantly telling yourself, I'm going to put this off for tomorrow? How are you going to be successful if you've got a job to do, but you can't even do the job? Like that for me never sat right. But that looking at success as a relative term and what I defined it back then to what I define it now is success is more than just finances. Success is more than just having a nice house. Success is more than just having a beautiful girlfriend or a healthy relationship. Success is knowing who you are on a day-to-day basis. That's part of it. Then success is working hard. If you can tell yourself that I did something for myself today that is going to improve me and make me better today and set me up for a positive and a awesome tomorrow as well, that's successful. Success is also the persistence that you strive for on a daily basis. If you're not persistent, then you won't create good habits. I keep going back to it, but that for me is success. Like if I didn't have this mentality of working hard, the Storybox wouldn't be what it is today. I wouldn't be who I am today. Going through all these failures, and I think that my teacher saw the kind of person that I really was, but I didn't see who I really was. And he was just sort of giving me hints and saying, "Think about this," because he knew I was a thinker. And he, when you give me something to think about, my brain goes wild. It goes deep into like I was when I was growing up, but I didn't understand it. And it takes time to really understand it. And I tell you, Josh, like when it hit for me, it was like a light bulb moment just went off. I'm like, crap, this is great. Why didn't I see you before? And but I've had people like that throughout my life that have given me hints and they've told me you're going to be this, Jay. But it was time for me to start believing it. And believing it not because they told me, but believing it because I know it is the truth. Because I've seen it in my life. See, I got blinded to what people were saying and how I should look and how I should perceive. And I literally created this and blinded myself. Now I see what others have seen and what I know to be there, what I know to be real, my character, my values, my persistent nature. That that's what to me success is like. Going through like the iceberg analogy. You know, everyone sees the top of the iceberg, but they never see underneath. You know, I want to enable people to see more than just the tip of the iceberg. I want them to see, yes, I've had my quote successes, the good stuff that feel great, but I've also had these other successes that have led me to this point, which is the hard work, the disappointments, the rejection, the failures, the unkind words that have been said, all these things, man, to me, I believe is what he meant. And I wish I could go back to him today and say, thank you. Thank you for showing me because you were one of the catalysts to showing me and leading me to where I needed to go.
Yeah, I agree. I think on that note too, success to me is, to add to that, is feeling congruent with your internal world and your external world. Because you and I have both mentioned how we lived so much, kind of as like a false facade that we were trying to create. Like we were trying to create this avatar that people would accept, but we had to accept ourselves to let that go. And I think that that's something that I really appreciate you sharing. And I had an idea, and I was trying to figure out where to go with it. But you mentioned, not being able, or you wanting to go and thank your professor. But something too that you were mentioning was that came to mind. Actually, here I got it now. Is like the power of suggestion. It could be negative, it could be positive, but through our lives, especially when we're younger and we're not speaking, we're not understanding conversations. We're so suggestible. But as we get older and we start to comprehend, language and things that are said to us, we don't have the experience to kind of go off of to make things, or to allow them to be a choice consciously. So we're just kind of running on, primal instincts and what has occurred that we've witnessed up until that time. And you've mentioned becoming really conscious now of these events, and now you're reflecting on these hints that people that were supportive, that were in your corner, were suggesting to you. And it just goes to show how powerful suggestion is, because you also had a lot of outside noise in the negative context suggesting things, and for whatever reason you gravitated towards that, and then you fought against it till you got to these low points, which is something I think we share and a lot of people share, is we get to these low points in our lives that we finally are challenged to the point where we're like, this is not what I want, this is not me, this is not who I intended to be, this is not where I intend to be, this is not what I intended to see or feel or think, this is enough. And we have these break points that lead us to these aha moments, these moments of clarity, these breakthroughs to this greatness, and then with this new path that we're on. And I want to ask, because this is what I'm assuming based on our conversations, but you and I are similar in the sense that we want to share these stories. We want to be vulnerable. We want to be authentic to help relate to people, to not feel alone, to not feel broken, or they're not, not to have a disbelief in themselves. Because as you and I know, with self-awareness, with the people keeping us accountable and helping create self-awareness, what we put our minds to, it's cliche, but like what we put our minds to, it's possible. We can make these things manifest if we truly believe and we stay consistent, we stay persistent, we create the inspiration, the momentum. And so, like I said, like I don't want to speak for you, but is that something that you see yourself doing, is just leading by example, with just sharing to resonate with people, to inspire them to change?
100%. Like I want to change. Well, I can't change people. I can inspire people to change. And that's what I realized only this year, actually, because, I tried as hard as I could for many years to try and change people. And it's wrong. It's a wrong mentality to have. So I want to do the very best that I can through my story, through your story, through as many people's stories as I can, to inspire change in people, to make them realize that they are worth something, that we all are human beings. We all struggle. We all go through hardships. We all go through pains and suffering and you name it. But it doesn't have to define you. It doesn't have to define your worth. You can allow it to make you grow and make you go back to the gratitude part. Allow Gratitude is something that a lot of people need to have. Like, we are ungrateful all the time because society tells us, like, you've got so much stuff, be ungrateful for it, which is weird. But gratitude is an attitude that you can turn on and off whenever you like. So make sure that you're turning it on every single second of every single day, and understand that to inspire others, you have to be authentically grateful for you, not for other people, for you first. Because how are you going to inspire other people if you can't first be grateful for who you are and what you've been through and all your pain? You know, we have this mentality and this to judge others, and it's so simple to judge. It's easy for the way they speak, the way they look, act, you name it. But that's not proper. That's not it's not right, and it needs to change. But the only way society is going to change is if you decide for yourself that you want to change. And I realized, looking at my life, looking at all the things that I went through, I could have gone down a very different path, but I chose not to, because the choice of going down that road wouldn't have led me anywhere good. I wanted to help people. I think that unselfish mindset of wanting to help people, giving back of my time, my resources. I know I don't have a lot of resources or finances to give back, but I know I can give my time. I know that if my story can be of value to some people, I know I can give that. And that for me is, to be honest with you, a person's story is more important than how much money they have in their bank account, because that's real. It doesn't go at the flick of a switch. Money comes and goes more than you can make this stuff. But your story, it stays with you forever. So cherish that, value that, and hold it dear to your heart. And don't think for a moment that you are better than anybody else. That's pride, that's ego. And then what I realized, that in failure, you also learn humility. Another saying, go back to humility and understand that without our actions and our works, we are nothing. We're nothing but blood, bone, and muscle. And your life, it's still worth something, but you got to realize that it is worth something. But understand that you're not better than somebody else. So that's what I want to do, is use my life as a tool, an instrument to inspire young people, to say, hey, look, you may be going through this difficult time at the moment, but that's okay. Because on the other side of it, if you decide to allow it to grow you, you will become better. Don't get into the defeatist mentality like we were talking about before. Allow it to make you better. I want to come alongside those people. I want to share deep and meaningful moments with them, because that's where value lies. That's the essence of life. Is not taking, it's giving. And I want to give my story to hopefully change the world. That's my goal, is to reach as many people as I possibly can. And I know it seems like a far-fetched goal for many people, but I see it. And I may not be the best speaker. I may not have the best thoughts, but I know that my story for someone is going to resonate with them. And I know that if they ever want to reach out, they can. And if they ever have any questions, I know I'm only 23, but I know I've still got a long way to go. But I know that here's one thing, and it's very important for a lot of people to understand. Age is just a number. It's just a number. And the problem is that a lot of adults, a lot of people seem to think that with age comes wisdom 100%. Don't get me wrong, but age is just the number. I know 16-year-olds that are more mature than some adults. I know people that have gone through so much that they have this next level maturity aspect. They know a lot more about life at a young age. But don't think for a moment that you can't learn something from a 19-year-old, from a 16-year-old, because once again, you're getting in that ego mentality. You're thinking you're becoming closed off, you're becoming proud and arrogant. And no one likes people that are proud or arrogant. Trust me. And always understand that at whatever age you are in life, you're always learning. You never stop, and always be open to it, no matter what age. Okay? So I just thought I'd say that and throw it in.
No, that's perfect. And I think that's a good place to end is, the 2 points you made. You're never too old to learn. You're always continuing to learn. And to me, if you're not learning, you're not growing, you're not living. And something else you said was you can't change the world, but you can inspire change. But it starts with you. Lead by example, and the rest takes over. And I think that that's a really profound thing for people to think about, because we live in a society where we want to complain about everything, about our lives, about others' lives, about the government, about this, about that. But I don't see a lot of people's actions matching up to their words. And so I think that that's a really profound thing to think about, to end this conversation on, is just to be conscious of the change you want to see in the world and understand you can only change yourself. Lead by example, do the work, even when no one's looking. That's what makes up the best athletes, the best, the most successful people in general is when they walk their talk, even when the lights are out. It's something that I think, I see in you. I think that I do a good job at that, and I strive to do a good job at that. Life's not perfect. We're not going to be on our A game every day, but the fact of the matter is we get up and we strive for that. We don't stop trying. One day, we may have a challenge, we may fall down. The next day, we're picking ourselves back up, we're going forward. As long as you're moving forward, that's all we can ask for. So with that being said, man, I really appreciate you taking the time to chat with me today. I'm sure we're going to have more conversations moving forward, but just so that way people can know where to look to find you, to find your podcast, anything else you want to share, where can they find more of you?
So they can follow DJ underscore Director J. That was my nickname in high school. It was on the back of my jersey. So I thought why not put it on Instagram. And then the Storybox podcast is for the actual podcast. It can also, I'm building a website at the moment, so that's coming out soon. It'll just be the Storybox podcast. Keep an eye out for that one. And then you've also got, I guess, Apple Podcasts and Spotify to listen to any episodes. You can hear Josh's soon as well. We've got 2-parters, so it's pretty cool. I think the first one went for over an hour and the second one went for another hour. So 2 hours worth of amazing content coming out very soon with Josh, and his story is incredible. I really appreciate you, man, for your influence and on my life as well, even though it's only been quite short, but it's been quite profound. And I always find that whenever we do a talk, I'm always uplifted and I'm always like feeling better about myself after we've actually spoken, which is amazing. And I also want to say as well, touching on leaving an impact on people's lives, always remember that I say that words are cheap, actions are expensive. So value your actions above your words, but always go back to your words. And if you say something, follow it up with action, and show people rather than tell them. Show them that you can be the change, and people will follow you. That's it. That's what a leader does. So
yeah, I think that's perfect. Yeah, leaders lead. They don't teach theory.
no.
Well, awesome, Jay. Well, I appreciate your time, and like I said, I'm sure we'll be talking again soon. So thank you so much.
Definitely, man. Absolute pleasure.